So to kind of give a little bit of a recap, previously in Nehemiah, what we had is we talked about how Persia is the ruling country, if you will, the ruling nation. The Persians were in charge. They were a great, powerful nation, and Israel is in exile, and Persia's ruling over Israel. And how Persian usually does their ruling is quite fascinating. We didn't get to cover this last week, so we'll do it now since we're here. How they do their ruling is they capture a country, they divide them up, and they allow them freedom. They get freedom of religion in the place where they were put. Like when Persia captures Israel, they take the people out of Israel and then they put them in other countries, okay? So now technically Israel was given under exile by Babylon. Persia came in and defeated the Babylonians, and they grab people and they move them to other countries so that they're not at their home, but then they tell them, you are free to do whatever you want. You want to be a car mechanic? Open up a shop. You want to be a factory worker? There's a whole bunch right over there. You want to work in accounting? Fine. We got a cubicle right over here. And you get complete freedom, and you get freedom of religion within your area. Okay, so that's how Persians do their rule. That's why their rule lasted for so long. Isn't that a smart way of doing it? You don't get a lot of resistance from people. You don't get resistance from the slaves and from the people that you conquered. In fact, most of them are like, really? It's life as usual? Just we write our taxes to you instead of that person? Okay. You know, and everything else is free. There's freedom there. Okay, so that's how Persian rule is. Now, there was a big uproar because they raised taxes. And not that we know anything about that, okay, but they raised taxes, and they raised taxes again. There was 2 revolts that have happened because of the tax raising. And on the second revolt, a Persian general by the name of Megabyzus captured a couple of Greek generals as well. And so the Megabyzus captured Greek generals, had them in prison, and promised them release. He told them, you guys will be freed, I promise. The previous ruler, his name was Darius, set up rules. I'm going to honor those rules. You're going to be free to go later. We're just going to keep you in prison for a while until the revolt's done, and then we're going to release you. Well, the king of Persia, the king of our story that we're going to be going through, his name is Artaxerxes, and Artaxerxes' mom says, kill the generals. Like the Queen of Hearts, she goes off with their heads. And so Artaxerxes listens to his mama. Being a mama's boy, a party animal, but a mama's boy nonetheless, says, fine, I'll kill them all. Megabyzus finds out about this. He's upset. He's distraught. He says, no, I offered them freedom. Artaxerxes says, they're dead. Deal with it. Okay, so Megabyzus does a revolt from the inside. He says, fine, down with the king. And he leads a whole bunch of his army men to fight against Persia from the inside. So Persia's at a state of unrest. Okay, that's where they're at. And their now biggest threat, when they're a country under distress and unrest and all that problems, their biggest threat at this point is Egypt. That's their biggest problem. And in order to keep Egypt from intervening, in order to keep Egypt at bay and distant and not feeling like they can become a threat at this vulnerable time, the goal is to keep the buffer state at peace, and that's Israel. Because Israel is in between where their main headquarters is at and where Egypt is at. So there's Israel. If Israel's happy, Egypt will likely not intervene because they don't want to deal with storming through Israel and all that problem and all that mess. They're not going to even get much wind of it. It's going to be fine. So if they can keep Israel happy, Egypt will stay at bay. So now that's where King Artaxerxes is at. He's thinking to himself, how do I keep Israel happy? What can I do for that? And that's where we got last week. Entering stage left, Nehemiah finds out that Jerusalem has yet to be rebuilt. This was chapter 1. Jerusalem had yet to be rebuilt, that God had ordered for it to be rebuilt. There has already been 2 returns back to Israel to rebuild Jerusalem, but then they had oppression. They had people against them, giving them threats, writing them bad tweets and emails, and they were acting like a twit, and they were going off, and so the construction didn't get completed, didn't happen. They got tired of all the bad Facebook statuses, so they gave up rebuilding Jerusalem and the walls. So the temple got, for the most part, rebuilt, but not the walls around the temple and around Jerusalem. And so now Nehemiah gets wind of this. It didn't get done. It didn't get finished. Nehemiah gets brokenhearted. It's amazing, after so many years of living life, suddenly he gets this new awakened passion for serving God. A new awakened passion to saying, you know what? I'm impressed upon by God to get this done. I'm broken. He cries. He grieves. He prays out to God. Give me wisdom. Give me strength. Give me whatever I need to get that task done. I want to do it. I got to find a way to do it. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go to the king and I'm going to ask him. And we know something very important about Nehemiah. He was a guy that was very respected by the king. He was a cupbearer. The cupbearer is the guy who tests the king's wine, drinks it first to make sure it's not poisoned. So Nehemiah is the guy that risks his life for the king on a daily basis, just about. Whenever the king wants wine to be poured, Nehemiah drinks it first, and then the king watches Nehemiah for any twitches, any eye problems, any complexion, just looks at him and goes, I think Nehemiah's going to live. Party, everybody. And so they have their parties because the kings of Persia they're Animal House on steroids. They really, really are. They make anything sororities can do look like nothing. Okay, that's just how the Persian kings are. They are party people. Okay, absolutely party people. And Nehemiah is this cupbearer. He gets the king's ear. Nehemiah also, by the way, has access to the king's harem. Therefore, he's a eunuch. All cupbearers were eunuchs in the Persian army. And we don't know how much freedom Nehemiah had. We know Persians give a lot of freedom. Nehemiah is still a Jewish slave in exile. And yet, it's almost like, you want this job? Nehemiah goes, okay, well, we're going to have to shorten you a little bit. Okay. That dedication to that job is wow, okay? So I don't know how it all came about that Nehemiah got his job. I don't know if it was forced into it. With the freedom that Persia gives, it seems like he was given a choice. I don't know about you. I'm not dedicated to my job like that. I work at the bus station sometimes for each week, and if I was told by Greyhound that in order for you to sell tickets for us, you have to go and become a eunuch, I'd be like, take this job and, I start quoting country. That's what I would do. I just would, okay? So, it's impressive. So that's the situation. That's where we are at. Now, Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1 starts as follows. During the month of Nisan, that's not to be confused with the month of Ford or Chevrolet. Okay, during the month of Nisan in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was set before him, I took the wine and then I gave it to the king. In other words, this is Nehemiah doing his per usual duties, his job, okay? The wine's poured, I'm sipping it, I'm not dead. Here you go, king, have at it, it's a good time. Now, here's the thing. We mentioned before about the month last week, just a little bit. We just kind of talked about it. I told you to sit on it for a while. Now with the month of Nisan. What this means is, since Nehemiah heard about the problem at Jerusalem, 4 months have passed. Okay, 4 months have passed since Nehemiah heard about the walls of Jerusalem. 4 months have gone by. He had heard about it around November, December, and now it's about April. And he is now approaching the king. Okay, so when you read Nehemiah, it's real easy to just kind of go, I heard about the walls. I'm brokenhearted. God, give me wisdom. Hey, king, I got to do something. And it seems like he's just really flying through it because the text goes really, really quick. There's not a lot of details. What did he do during that 4 months? It was that prayer that he gave God in chapter 1 toward the end. That prayer over 4 months, over and over again. Nehemiah is strategizing. He's planning. He's preparing. He's trying to figure out what he's going to do, what he's going to need, what it's going to take, and the steps to go about doing it. So he's not going to go at it just improvising it. He's not going to go at it shooting from the hip. Okay? And of course, churches today don't do things without a lot of planning. Okay, we're going to have a lot to learn from Nehemiah on this because so many times we get ideas and want to do something and then we just do it. And here's Nehemiah saying we got to do something. It's important. God wants us to do it, but we're going to take time getting there because he has to be strategic. He has to really think this through in a prayerful way. And so 4 months of Nehemiah's planning and preparing. We're going to see more on this in a little bit, and we're going to see more of this in the weeks to come. Okay, so the verse continues. I had never been sad in his presence. That's the end of verse 1. So the king said to me, why are you sad when you are not sick? This is nothing but depression. Here's what's going on at this point. The king hates sadness. Okay? In fact, if somebody comes to the king and he has a down face, he's not smiling, and if he's not going, hi, king, if they're not like that all the time, it's just creepy. Okay? If I did a whole sermon like this, you guys would never come again. So I'm going to try it. For today, I'm just going to, no, I'm not going to do it. No way. It would kill me. It really, really would. I'm a happy guy. That would kill me. Okay? But if you aren't like that with the king, he kills you. Okay? That's how it is. And so here's Nehemiah. He's upset. He's sad, and it's weighing on him and weighing on him. And you can only live a lie so long. You can only do this for so long until eventually what's inside will manifest outward. What is on the brain will eventually work its way to the heart and work its way to behavior, actions, nonverbal communication. And you will eventually see what's happening on the inside. We know this very well in our society. Like when my wife says, I'm hungry, I want to eat. Well, what would you like to eat? Whatever you want, just surprise me. Okay, how about pork and beans? And she goes, yay. You know, and I just know that besides the verbality of yay, which normally would mean good idea, it was more of a yay, you know, that she wasn't extremely thrilled with that idea. So I tried again. Okay, well, what about this? Okay, what about this? There it is. There it is. Okay, it's that manifestation. So now Nehemiah is just before the king, and he's going to approach the king. This is the time. And he's scared, he's nervous, he's sad, he's distressed, he's frustrated, he's just trying to figure out the right words. He's going to the king, and he's doing the wine tasting, and he's just focused. Okay, he's so focused on his issues in his head, so focused that the king looks and notice that this big, goofy Bozo the Clown grin is gone. Okay, it's missing. And the king goes, why are you sad? You're not sick. Because if you're sick, you know, we have things about that. But I know you're not sick, so this is obviously depression. Which means then that what's the king's next order? Off, you know, with your head. It's Alice in Wonderland here. That's what this is. Nehemiah is a male version of Alice, okay? It's kind of what it's like. So here, the king's like, this is nothing other than depression. That's where we find out, Nehemiah says in verse 2, I was then overwhelmed with fear. Here it just hits him. Because now he's like, okay, this is it. This is it. There's no going back because he sees I'm sad. And if I don't give a good reason, it's nice that Nehemiah is the cupbearer, because if he were anybody else, he would not have a chance to explain himself. If he were anybody else, the king would have had him dead already. He would have went, you're a buzzkill. Kill him. Right? That's what it would be. It would be over. But because he's the cupbearer, and because he's so loyal, because he's a great worker, because he has a friendship with the king in the king's ear, the king gives him one chance to get this right, to be able to say, what is going on? So now Nehemiah's freaking out because he's going to have to give the answer. He's not wanting to give, and this is life or death here. This isn't like promotion, not a promotion, raise, not a raise. Is my boss going to talk to me? Is that girl going to reject me? Is that guy going to laugh at me? It's not about asking someone on a date. It's not like that. As scary as some of those things are, it's not like that. This is even worse. This is life or, and I know teenagers make dating life or death. I understand that. They really, really do. It's like, he likes me. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. And they get all extreme and over melodramatic. I get that. I know that. You know, he's just the awesomest guy. And if he says something like, I think we should date someone else, I'm dead. Someone kill me. He wants to date someone else. Oh, what a world. You know, and I know they make it melodramatic. They make it life or death. This really is life or death, because you will wake up tomorrow if someone rejects you. You may not want to, but you will wake up tomorrow, okay? When you're detached from your head, you do not wake up tomorrow. It does not happen, okay? So Nehemiah, attached to his head, is just like, I'm filled with fear. Filled with it. What does he get? It's understandable, right? Do you get that? It's completely understandable. So we need to talk about this just for a little bit. I want to do an excursus, okay? That's what I would like to do. I would like to do an excursus. An excursus basically is a fancy academic term. See, that's why you came, for an increase of your vocabulary, right? So here's the increase of your vocabulary. An excursus is a word that means a journey, going on an alternate path, almost like a detour type of a thing. So we're going to go on a little bit of a journey, a little side note here for a moment, because I think this will help us be better prepared and for applying what's about to happen. So with this excursus, I would like to point out that fear serves usually as two major functions, either as a motivator or as a demotivator. Okay, either as a motivator or a demotivator. When fear is a motivator, what happens is you become afraid, and that fear drives you, motivates you to prevent what you are afraid of. To do something to prevent what you are afraid of. Now, here's what we have to keep in mind. Fear is an emotion. Okay, that's what it is. It is not reality. Fear is an emotion, and all emotions, 100% of all emotions, love, fear, anger, all of it, is a reaction to something. Always thoughts. If you say it was all about circumstances, well, if circumstances happen, your thoughts think about the circumstances, and emotions come from that. Okay, so all emotions are a reaction to how we are thinking about it. So what happens is our mind plays out a story in our head. That story has not happened. It is predicting the future. And that story will create potentially fear if it's trying to predict the future. This could happen. This will happen. This may happen. This is going to happen. Okay, your mind plays out a story that has not happened, but it's playing it out. And your level of fear will be based upon your perception on whether or not your future predicting is accurate and valid. So the higher probability of your future telling being accurate, the higher the level of fear. So if a person loses their job, as an example, okay, person loses their job, and they then start thinking, I'm going to lose my car. I'm going to lose my house because I'm not going to have income, and I'm not going to be able to pay for X, Y, and Z bills. Okay, that will create fear. Now, they're predicting the future. They have not lost their car. They have not lost their house. But how accurate, how much of a probability is it that that will happen if they do not get income coming in? Okay, pretty high. It's pretty high. You could pretty much take that one to the bank, depending on what type of a bank account you previously have. Okay, so now, based on that, comes a level of fear. If you have $40,000, $50,000 in the bank account, the fear might not be all that great. Well, I can float for a while. I can get a job when I can try to be picky about what job I want. I got time. But if you got $100 in the bank, okay, and you've been living paycheck to paycheck, that fear is going to be higher. It's going to be, I don't care what job it is, as long as it's income coming in, and I'll find something better later. I need to get out there right now. Okay, so a different level of fear that becomes motivating. Okay, it becomes motivating. That's where this picture comes in. This motivates me. If I saw this in real life, I'm motivated. I'm very motivated. Okay? Because my mind is telling me a story, and that story does not include a rubber tennis ball and licking my face. Okay, my story is Jaws meets Cujo. And I look at, if I see a dog go, right? Yeah, my mind telling me a story. That this story will involve some type of a future that will include pain and suffering, maybe even death. Okay, that's what my mind is telling me the story of. Now, it could be one of those puppies that are like, hi there. You know, I've seen dogs like that. You know, I've seen them. They all like, we have a neighbor dog that's kind of like that, our direct neighbor, but a dog in the neighborhood that's like, he comes up, he's like, and I'm just like, oh, I need new underwear. It's just, here he comes. He's coming right up, and he almost walked into my house. Freaked me out. I opened the door, and he was like right there going, roof. I'm like, okay. And then he just looked at me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, if I see one little tooth, I'm passing out right here. This is just it. And then he's like, I'm like, oh, who's the good puppy? Who's the good puppy? I'm going to go change my clothes. You go back home now, right? That's... I know some dogs are like that. Some dogs are not like that. They're like what looks like this dog to be, that if this came running at me, I'm going to go, ah! Telling myself a story. And I'm going to be motivated, very motivated, to act based upon the story that I'm telling myself. Okay, so you get the idea how motivated fear works, how fear can be a motivator. Same thing with obeying God. You could have the fear of committing a moral wrong, fear of committing sin, offending God, offending whatever, getting caught, whatever that fear may be, and that can motivate you to act obediently. Okay, and if you think that the level of harm and whatever is of lowness, you may end up be saying, I'm not all that motivated, I'm not all that afraid, because who's it really going to hurt if I do this? No one's going to find out. It's just a secret little sin. So what? And we can find ourselves in a really bad place if we're not appropriately motivated out of an appropriate level of fear of what sin does to our life. This is where addictions come into play and bad habits come into play, where sin can become a complete master of our lives. So that's fear as motivator. Fear as demotivator works quite a bit differently. This is where fear does not motivate you, but because you are afraid, you actually choose to do nothing about it, because what's the point? Okay, that's how this fear works. That's how fear as demotivator works. Is where something is coming, I lost my job, well, I'm not hireable anyways, so I'm not even going to apply for anything. Woe is me, welcome homeless shelter, Mill Trotter, you're my friend, and off it goes. There's just no desire to try to do anything about it. It is this complete level of fear that moves you toward what's called depression. Okay, so and this is the act, by the way, if your fear becomes unchecked and turns into anxiety and worry, what happens is it leads to depression. That's the natural conclusion to it. So you have habits of thinking that says, here's my story, and I'm afraid. And if you don't try to get that into check, trusting God, making plans, being strategic, etc., being motivated, what happens is that fear becomes I have a problem and I'm not able to find a satisfying solution. I have a problem without a satisfying solution. I got a problem and it circles itself over and over again, spiraling itself deeper and deeper into your subconscious, deeper into your heart and into your soul. And what happens is that habits of thinking leads out to the emotion of fear that eventually leads to the attitude and the issues of worry and anxiety that ends up saying, because there's no solution, because nothing is satisfying, because I can't figure it out, something's wrong with me, so therefore why even bother? I feel hopeless, I'm in a terrible situation, there's nothing I can do about it, so therefore I am demotivated to do anything. I can't do anything about this, and if I can't do anything about this, life can't be satisfying with this problem still existing, so therefore I'm not going to do anything. Okay, and it becomes a demotivator. And by the way, there's the problem, is that life can't be satisfying with the problem existing, because yes, it can. Not every problem has a solution. And you just got to accept what you have to accept. And sometimes you have these expectations and these dreams and these goals that are completely unrealistic and aren't going to happen. You're not going to reach the stars like you thought. You're going to have to lower yourself down a little bit and not have so much pride. And you're going to have to settle for something at times in life. Okay, but if you aren't willing to do that and you end up looking at this problem and you can't accept that this problem exists, then what happens is it becomes a demotivator. And you end up toward depression. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm just going to be sad. I'm just going to lock myself away. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a girlfriend, and that's unacceptable. And life is not worth living unless I have. Since I can't find, then obviously I'm worthless and I'm whatever, and I can't live life like that anymore, so I'm done. And that fear of being alone demotivates to having complete solid depression. Okay, this is where bullying leads people towards suicide, which is a big, sudden issue in our society, which really took me for a surprise, because bullying has existed since the dawn of man, and now people are killing themselves over it. Teenagers are like, people said bad things about me on Facebook, so I'm going to kill myself. This is that fear that what they're saying is right and other people might believe it and that this is actually creating my identity. There's nothing I can do about it, so I am worthless, so I'm going to get so depressed I'm going to result in. Okay, it's that demotivation. Inverted motivation to go deeper down rather than motivation to go up. That's why I call it demotivation. Okay, it's a downward motivational spin. That's what fear plays. It plays one of the two ways. It really does. Now, I'm oversimplifying some of the issues because we don't have that much time. But I'm just giving you this tip of the iceberg here, that this is the two basic directions of this fear. Either it motivates or it's going to demotivate. The question is, which route are you going to choose? Because yes, the choice is up to you. You control your emotions. You control your thinking. That does not happen for you. It just, we're so lazy with it, we go with the easiest thought. And that is usually the thought towards sin, because we all have sin. We're all twisted, we're all fallen, so our minds are going to be like a broken wheel on a shopping cart, lean toward the easier thought of sin, demotivation, anxiety, worry, giving up, etc. That's our default. We have to work intentionally and very completely with all our gusto to keep our cart straight and to try to not give in to that demotivation, but to choose the motivating fear. That when something happens, we allow that fear to motivate us rather than demotivate us. Okay, so now we can go back to Nehemiah. Nehemiah and the king. So here Nehemiah is before the king. He's sad. He's frustrated. He's scared. The king is saying, why are you not ecstatic right now? Have you not had enough uppers? What is going on? Do you need a Mountain Dew? What's up with this here, dude? You're not sick, so what's going on? So Nehemiah's afraid. The question is Nehemiah's fear motivating or demotivating? That's the question. Now we know the story. If you were able to read ahead, we've discovered that Nehemiah, with his fear, he has a choice now. He can either say, I'm just so excited for you, king, and he could back off and be demotivated to obey God. He could be demotivated and just let it go and just go, woohoo, king, I'm fine, everything's good. Here's some wine for you. I just thought that, I thought it was going to get me. I wasn't sure about this wine. I drank it and, but nope, everything's good, king, it's fine. Here you go. He could do that. Or he could say, yeah, king, we need to have a talk. He's going to be motivated to take action. And that's what he does. Verse 3, and I replied to the king. He was very afraid. So I replied to the king, may the king live forever. Why should I not be sad, though, when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? He starts with this phrase, may the king live forever. In other words, this is a blessed be the king type statement. He starts off by praising the king. King, may you reign, may it continue, may you be prosperous. Long live the king. Okay, I have a problem, king, but I have no beef with you at all. I have no problem with you. You're fine. You're great, as a matter of fact. Long live the king. Okay, that's Nehemiah's start. Then he says, but I do have a problem, king. My home, where I come from, is desolate. Where I come from is broken. Where I come from is all torn apart. And I need, it's horrible. It's horrible, king. Why? I'm sad because my home is gone. That's why I'm sad. Now comes the kicker. Because once you admit being sad, the king usually, okay, so he has no excuse as far as, it's just this temporary moment, I really am happy, it's okay. It's, no, I really am sad. And here's why. You want a buzzkill, O king? Here's the buzzkill. Okay, so he lays on the biggest buzzkill of all. Okay? It is here that Nehemiah does this. Verse 4. Then the king asked me, so what's your request? And Nehemiah prayed to the God of heaven. Sometimes a short prayer is good. There's a time and a place for short prayers. And I know that I grew up thinking that if you're going to pray holy, you had to have this big, long prayer. I did. It wasn't taught that way by my family. It was taught to me by my churches. And my mom's like, whew. You know, it was taught to me by churches because there was always some old fuddy-duddy that would stand up and they would and I'd be like a kid. I was attending a church in Holland and the pastor would call upon certain deacons in the congregation to pray, and I would actually start praying before the pastor called prayer, and my prayer was different. God, please don't let him call so-and-so, because if he does, that's 5 minutes right there and I'm hungry. So please, God, let him call someone else. Then he calls so-and-so. And I go, oh, God, why didn't you listen to me? Please. And then the guy stands up. Oh, Father is heaven upon the nations upon which I have created. And I'm just like, oh, for crying out loud. You know, and I it's what I had over and over again. Whenever the pastor prayed, it was this big, long, thought out, amazing. And then, and it didn't help that I went to seminary. And I had these very articulate professors, same stupid thing. Big, long. In fact, I had one professor that had the Common Book of Prayer and would read prayers that were 500, 400, 600 years old. And they're reading this big thing, and they're reading it with such emotion and passion. And I'm going, man, I just go, God help. How do I compete with this? This is horrible. And it took a while to learn. There is a time and a place for those long prayers, where you sit down, face before God, and you cry out to him in a long prayer. But there are times where a short prayer works. There are times where all it is, God, help me not make a fool of you right now. That's it. Okay? There are times for that quick, short prayer. And I'm telling you, posture is not always necessary for every prayer. Sometimes it's good to have a humble posture when you're thinking about who it is you're going before. But sometimes you just got to pray with your eyes open. You know, like when you're driving. Okay? Kneeling with your eyes closed, not recommended. Not recommended. Okay, and I don't know if people were doing that because the Christian radio station is like, okay, let's go ahead and go before the Lord in prayer. And if you're driving right now, please keep your eyes open and hands on the wheel. And I'm thinking to myself, is this a problem? Or people really, all of a sudden, on the highway, what happened? I was praying. Well, you know, but there's a time. And Nehemiah did not be like, king's like, so what's your request? Nehemiah didn't go, just a second. You know, that was happening. Nehemiah was like, okay, God, here it is. Help me. Okay, real quick, real simple, real short. So Nehemiah prays in a really, really, really short prayer. Here's the thing, though, since we're on this topic. Nehemiah spent 4 months doing what? Praying. And planning. Praying and planning. And I tend to discover that many people do not realize how well those two go together. We should be involved with praying and planning. And there are some people that are all plan and no pray, and some people that are all pray and no plan. And I tend to find that. The people are all, first off, all plan, no pray. They go into business, they go into work, and they got their plan for the day. They got it organized. They got it figured out. If they're going to start a business, they're going to go to Best Buy, and they're going to say, man, they got laptops, they got iPads, they got Apple TV. It all syncs with my smart TV. Hallelujah. Praise you, Jesus. This is great that it all works together, and I'm going to work this out, and I got my plan. I got it together, and if there's prayer at all, what the prayer is, God, I got a plan. Here it is. Make it work. Go to it. You're welcome. Right? That's the all plan, no pray. But then there are some people that are all pray and no plan. They're like, they got this motto that they chant, like some type of nut. And they go, let go and let God. I'm just going to pray, God, make this successful. And I'm just going to dip right into it. And I'm not going to give any thoughts of strategy. I'm not going to give any thoughts of planning or purpose or anything. I'm just going to let go and let God. And God's like, put your hands back on the wheel. I give wind to this. I don't turn it like that. I'm going to guide you, but you got responsibility here. Okay, and so we got this problem. And here's the other problem I tend to find within church structures and dynamics. Sometimes the planners and the prayers are different people. And that leads to a lot of conflict because some people are like, I got an idea. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And other people are like, wait a minute, we got to pray. And these people are like, well, I don't want to say no because that's a bad thing to say. You can't pray. But man, I wish they'd shut up. You know, and the prayer's like, we got to pray. Now we got to wait for the Lord's answer. And then people are like, but we got to get going. And especially when your planners are not prayers and your prayers are not planners, they can really have a conflict. Because the prayers then don't want to do anything, and the planners don't want to take time to really seek the creator of the universe. We need to mesh those two together like a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Okay, that's what we need to have. We need to be able to bring that together so we have planners with prayer, praying and planning. That all has to kind of work together. And so I wonder how many of you might actually drive to work and get your plan for the day, and prayer is not really there other than, God, help me, help my plan be good. Not, God, is my plan appropriate? God, what should be your plan today? Yeah, I'm going to work. Well, your plan is to go to work. Maybe God's plan is that you end up at work ministering to someone. And you need to be submissive to his plan on that. You know, we need to have prayer and planning. Work out our day, work out our list. How many of you, when you make a shopping list, do you ever stop and ask whether it's good stewardship? Whether you're honoring God with the money you're spending and what it is you're buying, or if you need to adjust your list between what's needs and wants and make decisions. I know some people that will look at it and they'll be like, I'm going to go here, I'm going to buy this TV, I'm going to buy that DVD player, and I'm like, really? You need that? You know, you're going to pay $1,200 for that when you can pay $500 for this and it's just as good? But I want this other feature. There's other ways of doing that. You know, and people will just run through their list. They got their plan. They got it all figured out. And then if they pray after they've messed it up. They pray after it's all been completely jacked up. And they're like, God, I'm in financial ruin. I don't know what to do. Help me have more money. Help me. And God's like, you're the one that spent the money without seeking me first. You did planning without prayer. So here's Nehemiah doing both. And you can see this. He spent 4 months praying and planning, and now he's before the king, and he's giving out the plan, and he's still praying. And so Nehemiah finally gives the request. And this request is messed up. I just want to tell you that right now. Nehemiah has, the Jewish people would say Nehemiah has chutzpah. Okay, and he has more chutzpah in his pinky finger than sometimes I think I got in my body when I read what he requests. His request seems simple when you read it, but we're going to have to think this through briefly. And we're going to see what his request is really doing. Okay, this is going to shock you. Okay, this really is. This is unbelievable, his request. Check this out. So I answered the king, verse 5, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor with you. I love the respect Nehemiah has for his boss. Love that. Man, we can learn from that. Respect your boss, man. Even if they're a jerk, even if they're a pagan, even if they're anything you don't ever want to be, respect your boss. So if it pleases the king, and if his servant has found favor with you, send me to Judah and to the city where my ancestors are buried so that I may rebuild it. Simple request, right? Simple request. Send me to Judah. By the way, Nehemiah does what for a living? Test the king's wine. Think about this. Hi, king, I want you to send me away. You may die till you get another cupbearer. Sorry about that. You get that? Okay. It takes a while to get a cupbearer that you're going to trust. It takes a while. Okay, so there's a whole bunch that's happening here. Here's another thing that's happening here. Check this out. In Ezra chapter 4, remember, Ezra and Nehemiah used to be one book. It's only in our English Bibles that these have been separated into two separate books. In the Septuagint, Greek translation of the Old Testament, and in the original Hebrew Old Testament, of all that we have, Nehemiah and Esther are one book, meant to be read together at the same time collectively. Okay, so when you go back to Ezra chapter 4, you find out that they were building up Jerusalem, they're building up Israel, they're building up the temple and everything, and then they are told to stop. They are told to stop by a particular king named Artaxerxes. The very king Nehemiah is asking to let him start building the city again. He is saying, he basically, check this out, Nehemiah functionally is like a janitor in the Oval Office working for the President of the United States type of a thing, okay? Just follow me with this. He's like a janitor, trusted with throwing away documents and cleaning up the sensitive areas around the, okay, so he is a guy of respect here. So he's like a janitor at the Oval Office going to the president saying, I want you to change your view on your foreign policies. I don't like the way you've been treating Israel, and I want you to change your view, and I want you to go ahead and promote me to ambassador, to go there and take care of it, and I want you to make me mayor of the town when it's done, and you may die in the process. That's his request. Okay? That's what we're dealing with here. That's how gutsy Nehemiah is here. Okay? So, the king actually has a question now for Nehemiah, verse 6. The king with the queen. Notice this. Let's pause here. Who is sitting with the king? His wife. Yes, he has a harem with lots and lots of women. And yes, he can basically have his Monday flings and Tuesday flings. I understand that, but this is his queen. Okay? Nehemiah is telling the king, you made a mistake back at Ezra chapter 4. I want you to change your foreign policy. He's dissing the king in front of the queen. Now, I don't know about you. I know many guys that you can diss them all you want, but you diss them in front of their woman. And you got a different battle on your hands, right? Okay, so here's Nehemiah before the king, and the queen is present. That's an important detail. Okay, Nehemiah did not leave that out. Or leave that in by accident. That's intentionally there. That here's the queen with present. Okay, now the king's reputation's on the line. So the king with the queen seated beside him asked me, which means the queen's not like she's off in some little party gala somewhere. You know, she's not doing her nails, playing Barbies. She's there, seated beside him. How long, the king asked, will your journey take? And when will you return? In other words, I want you to stay my cupbearer, and I would love it if you'd be willing to come back. So how long are you going to be gone? How long is my life going to be at risk? Okay, how long are you going to be gone? So I gave him a definite time, and it pleased the king and to send me. Notice he doesn't tell us here how long he told the king, just as a definite time. You find out in chapter 13 that is 12 years. Think about that for a moment. Try going to your boss, asking him to send you to their competition to work for a while for 12 years. Okay, how do you think that would go over with your boss? Let's say you're an employee and you're working at Kohl's, and all of a sudden you go up to your boss and you say, you know what, for a little while I feel bad that, you know, my relatives, you know, they were building up this other company. I happen to be related to the Myers, and so I want to go there for a while and help them build up their stores so they can be a thriving company. I'd like to take about 12 years for that, and I would like for you to sponsor me in that, which means, Kohl's, please keep my paychecks coming. Yeah. That's going to fly. Okay? That's going to fly. So when it says, and it pleased the king to send me, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's a God thing. I know God, I believe this, that God does not violate free will, but God motivates. God uses history. God uses situations. He pieces it all together in a miraculous way. That's how God tends to work. And he does amazing things. And here God knitted everything together where the king is like, we're in turmoil. Megabyzes, my top general, is attacking my key cities. He knows our strategies. He knows where to hit our weak points. He understands the ins and outs of our operation. We need some way to corral this problem and keep Egypt at bay. I need some way to keep Israel happy. What can I do? Nehemiah, you want to do what? You want to go rebuild Israel? That'll make them happy. I like this idea. It's going to take 12 years? Fine. King's that motivated. It's amazing the fears that God could bring into our life that can motivate us to get his will done. It's amazing. So here's the king is motivated to get it done. Oh, and that's not even the kicker yet. Nehemiah has one more thing. Once he was pleased to send him, Nehemiah has one more little thing. Nehemiah wants to involve the USPS. Okay, not really. But here's what he says in verse 7 and 8. I also said to the king, if it pleases the king, let me have letters written to the governors of the region west of the Euphrates River so that they will grant me safe passage until I reach Judah. And let me have a letter written to Asaph, keeper of the king's forest, so that he will give me timber to rebuild the gates of the temple's fortress, the city wall, and the home where I will live. In other words, I would like to have a really pretty little house with a nice little chandelier, and king, I'd like your resources for that. I'd like your money, your wood, your timber, your rock, your whatever. And the king granted my request. I'm sure Nehemiah's like, well, he said yes to that. I wonder if he'll say yes to this. Hey, king, how about this? He said yes again. This is awesome. I wonder what else I could do. And so he said, I was graciously strengthened by my God. It's amazing what can happen sometimes. He was strengthened by his God. So here's basically what he's saying. King, here's what it would look like today. I'll use today's analogy again. He's a janitor, Oval Office, right? So he's like, hey, president, I know I'm a janitor, but I don't approve of your foreign policy. I'd like you to change your foreign policy. I want you to change your views on Israel. I want you to send me to Israel as an ambassador. I want you to pay for my trip, pay for all the rebuilding and the armory and everything else. I want you to make me mayor of the town over there when I get there, and I'll have a place to live. And by the way, I want you to go on to CNN, and I want you to tell everyone you were wrong. And I want you, because you sent out letters on CNN and Facebook and Twitter that you said that we're stopping the building of the temple. Well, I want you to go back on CNN and Facebook and Twitter and say that you're restarting it and that you're funding it even, that you were so wrong that you're funding it. So I want you to go to all the world here basically, and because it's going to spread. Everyone's going to share the letters, and it's going to be all along the travels between where he's at and where he's going. And people are going to know. People are going to hear. And it's just, man. Can you see how bizarre this is? And the king says, okay, get the cameras. Okay, get me a laptop. I'll log in. Facebook.com. There it is. My password, 123ABC. There it is. Not a good password. Okay, I'm going to log in. There it is. And he's saying, we're now rebuilding Israel. Thunk, there, satisfied? Nehemiah's like, yeah, it's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Now, in case you're wondering, what on earth is the point of all this? Because here's the thing. I want us to see the what, but I also want us to be completely familiar with the so what. What does this look like for today? Because I'm sure some of you are like, yeah, this is nice and all, but I'm not a cupbearer. Don't plan on being a cupbearer. I'm not a janitor in the Oval Office. So what does this mean? What does this look like? It's not like we necessarily have a task like rebuilding walls or anything like that. Though we learned last week that we had learned that the walls have been destroyed spiritually across our city. And that each church and the people of God are charged with rebuilding the spiritual brokenness and desolation within our city. That we are charged with that. That we are charged with going and restoring and fixing and working with. But many of us feel so much like Forrest Gump. Right? I feel that way. That we feel so much like Forrest Gump. And here's the thing. I know many people just don't get that movie. Basically, if they hate the movie, it's because I don't think they get it. Not really. Because usually, and even people who like the movie, I don't know if all of them get it. I've met people who get it, but I don't find that common. Most people say, well, it's great because it involves history and it's good acting and it's funny and it's neat and special effects are good for what they're doing. But here's what the movie's about. Here's what it is. The declaration of Forrest Gump is that if a mentally challenged, limited man can achieve in his life, what excuse do we have? What excuse do we have if we are not as mentally challenged, even if we are as mentally challenged as him, that we can still achieve? That's Forrest Gump's declaration. That's what it's, and it's like Forrest Gump is like the Nehemiah of our generation. Nehemiah is like the Forrest Gump of the Old Testament, because if you're either as smart as or smarter than Forrest Gump, everybody here is. Either you're as smart as or smarter than Forrest Gump. You're either as much resources as or more than Forrest Gump. You either have as much ability or more than Forrest Gump. And if he's able to do great things, so can you. So can you. That we don't have to have that fear. Because here's how Forrest Gump did everything he did. He had realistic expectations, and he didn't let fear be a demotivator. He had realistic expectations, and he did not let fear become a demotivator. So you may feel like I feel like one sometimes, and you may feel like a Forrest Gump. You may feel stupid. You may feel ignorant. You may feel useless, maybe even worthless. Maybe you feel like a crooked stick that can't be used for anything. You can't use it for furniture. You can't use it as a staff. You can't use it as a bow. You just are a crooked stick, bent weird, that can't be used for anything. And there's an old Gaelic saying that I'm going to twist into a different direction today for you. The old Gaelic saying says this, that God strikes straight blows with crooked sticks. I'd like to change it to, God can paint beautiful pictures with a crooked brush. Okay, God can make beautiful pictures with a crooked brush. His picture, man, it will end up looking like, how do I want to really word this for you? God can paint with you. Okay, that's the thing. God can absolutely paint with you. Regardless of any limitations you have, regardless how broken how bent your stick is, how broken your brush is, God can still paint with you. His picture may not look like what you may want it to. It may look totally different. You may not even see how the picture will end up at the end. I want to encourage you not to let fear prevent you from allowing yourself to be a contributor to that pretty picture that God is going to make with his canvas. Not to let fear demotivate you for saying, I don't want to be placed in the Creator's hands. I am not going to work with it. The fear of rejection is too high. I'm challenging you not to value other people's opinions so much that you are unwilling to do what the Creator wants to do with you. Not to value I want you to fear God more than people. I want you to value God more than people. And no matter what they say, and no matter what they expect, and no matter what they put down, no matter how they tweet or criticize or whatever, that God is going to paint a beautiful picture with you. He can do that. He did it with Nehemiah, and he can do it with you. Nehemiah was a sinful, twisted, crooked guy. He was far from perfect. Nehemiah was the type of guy that he just lived day in, day out, doing whatever, business as usual. He had his routine. It did not involve God. He didn't care too much about that. We don't have anything about his life about that other than we just know that he would just live in life in and out. That's all it was. He called himself a wicked, twisted, sinful man. And that when he found out what God wanted done, he became broken about it. And that's when he prayed out to God, forgive me, forgive the sins of my ancestors, and forgive me. I am sinful, and I'm broken, and I'm twisted. Help me to go and do what needs to be done. And he became motivated. He basically said, I am a broken, bent, useless brush. But God, I know that will not limit you from making a beautiful canvas, making a beautiful picture. So go ahead and paint with me. I'm going to go to the king. I'm going to do what needs to be done. Paint with me, oh God. And when he went to the king, he had that fear. And rather than saying, God, drop the brush and use a different brush. Rather than saying, God, I don't want to go this route anymore. I'm afraid that this may be destructive to me. He says, God, paint with me. Here we go. This is it. You dip me. It's on the canvas. Brush away. Brush away. King, here's what I want done. And when we go out into this community, when we go to work, when we go to school, when we go online, when we see our neighbors, we can allow fear to demotivate us where we do nothing and we stay quiet and we don't obey God and we don't speak and we don't do anything and we become this mute little mime in the kingdom of God. Or we could say, God, paint with me. And let all our fear motivate us. Say, I'm afraid, but God's going to use this. This is going to be great. And that you will speak and you will do and you will be able to perform what needs to be done. That it can indeed happen. Even if you got hurts in your life and you got to figure out how forgiveness is going to look, you may be afraid that they're going to hurt you again. In some cases, you got to be able to say, you know what, God, I'm going to trust you. You say to forgive as you have forgiven me. So fine, I'm going to forgive and I'm going to give them the freedom to fail me again. And I'm afraid, but I'm going to be motivated to allow that vulnerability to exist because, God, I know that's what you did for me on the cross. And I'm not going to let my fear demotivate me. I'm going to let my fear motivate me. And God, paint a beautiful picture of restored relationships, of a renewed community, of the spiritual brokenness being built up anew again, using me as a brush, using all you guys as a brush, using this church as a brush, using other churches as a brush. That's the call here. That's the call here. And I fear that it is so easy for us to live life business as usual in our routine, not being a brush, but being a bent stick laying on the floor. Day in, day out, I wake up, I go to work, I go home, I eat my supper, kiss the kids goodnight, and go to bed just to wake up and do it all again. No purpose, no direction, no meaning, no nothing. Just life day in, day out, rat race. And that's not how we're called to live. We are called to live for the kingdom of God, that while we're at work, there's a mission field. While we're in line at the store, there's a mission field. If you have children, there's a mission field. And that you're supposed to be working as a brush in God's hand, in the hand of the artist, painting a beautiful picture amongst all that you have been surrounded with all of it together, building it all up. And we're like, I know some of you struggle. I've talked with you. And I know you're like, but I live so far from the church, so how can I do something when I worship there? And my answer to that is simple. Nehemiah is in Persia. And where is it he has to do ministry at? Someplace else, and that's okay. The kingdom of God is not limited to where is next door to the walls of where we meet. The kingdom of God is connected to where your arms are able to reach where you're at. So wherever you're living, meet that community. If you go someplace else to worship and you have to travel a ways, that's okay. You can do that. You worship where you're at. Okay, you can travel. My mom travels 40 minutes to come to worship with us. And she is able to do ministry in Holland. She is able to because she has neighbors and she goes shopping there and she can talk to people there and she can witness to people there. Well, those people may never come here. It's not about that. It's about the kingdom of God. And the people she reaches can go to a church in Holland while she continues to worship here with us. And then we can hear stories about her successes and how God is using her and hearing about how he painted a little section of this corner of the canvas with her and how she's like, man, this happened. Now they're going to another church, but praise God that they're going and they met Jesus and they're together and this is great. Look at what's happening. A little corner of the canvas got painted. Isn't that beautiful? And that testimony can come in and we can continue sending people out. That's our goal here, to send people out, that we all come here to get sent out as paintbrushes on the canvas of this city. Because here we are in greater Metro Grand Rapids. There is over 500,000 lost people here who have themselves declared that they do not follow God or religion or anything that's about Jesus only at all. We learned about that last week. Over 500,000 people in Metro Grand Rapids that themselves have stated that they are not part of anything evangelical, anything like that that's Jesus only at all. So we have a big, messy, broken city. And it needs repainting. It needs rebuilding. Will you be that brush in the hands of a master Because there are great things that need to be done in this city. Great things can be done in this city. And God is waiting for you to say, paint with me. I'm a broken brush, and I'm a twisted stick. But you can paint a beautiful canvas with me. Let's have a word of prayer.